The studio lights were soft, but the tension was sharp. CNN's Kaitlan Collins sat across from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, shuffling her notecards like a magician prepping for a reveal. The segment had been billed as a civil conversation on race and democracy. But anyone watching knew, this wasn't going to be civil, and it definitely wasn't just a conversation. Congresswoman Crockett, Kaitlan began, her voice coated in poise, "You've been accused of escalating tension on Capitol Hill with your rhetoric. Do you think tone matters more than facts in today's politics?" Jasmine didn't move. She didn't blink. She just let the question sit, like a trap waiting to be acknowledged. When black women raise their voices, she finally said, they call it aggression. When power raises its hand, they call it tradition. Let's not confuse discomfort with disrespect. The room shifted. Kaitlan smiled tightly. So, no regrets about how you've addressed your colleagues in public hearings? Jasmine leaned forward slightly. I regret one thing, how long we let them lie before we answered. Producers exchanged glances behind the camera. The teleprompter kept rolling, but Kaitlan was already off script. This isn't a hearing, Congresswoman, she said. It's a national platform. Jasmine nodded. Exactly. And some of us don't get platforms unless we take the mic ourselves. And just like that, it wasn't Kaitlan's interview anymore. It was Jasmine's. Kaitlan adjusted in her seat, trying to regain control with a rehearsed smile. All right then. Let's talk specifics, she said, flipping to the next card. Do you think some of your colleagues on the left have gone too far in defending criminal justice reform, perhaps ignoring spikes in violent crime? Jasmine tilted her head, not dismissively, but like someone tired of old narratives dressed in new questions. You mean the spike in systems that never worked, she replied. Or the spike in headlines that ignore context? Kaitlan paused. The teleprompter rolled again, but the words on screen now felt distant, irrelevant. This isn't about crime statistics, Jasmine continued. It's about who gets branded a thug and who gets called a troubled young man. We don't just need justice reform, we need narrative reform. The audience behind the cameras leaned in. Even the floor manager stopped pacing. Kaitlan raised a brow. You're saying the media's part of the problem? Jasmine didn't hesitate. I'm saying the media builds the frame, and too often, black truth doesn't fit in it. The air in the studio turned electric. Kaitlan wasn't prepared for a guest who didn't just answer questions, she flipped them, rewrote them, and handed them back as indictments. And for the first time in the segment, Kaitlan didn't have a follow-up. Jasmine folded her hands calmly. She wasn't interrupting. She was taking over. Kaitlan forced a sip from her mug, buying time. Her next question was supposed to pivot, soften the edge. But Jasmine's words still echoed like a gavel in the studio air. Let's talk about unity, Kaitlan offered, tone lighter. Do you worry that your approach makes bipartisanship impossible? Jasmine blinked once, slowly. You mean the kind of bipartisanship that votes for injustice in suits and ties, she said. If that's what unity looks like, count me out. Kaitlan's eyes narrowed, just for a second. I believe in working across the aisle, Jasmine continued. But not when that aisle is a line drawn to silence the people I serve. There was no anger in her voice, just precision, like a scalpel cutting through spin. Kaitlan glanced toward the control booth. The producer gave a nod to keep rolling. Ratings were rising. So where's the line, then? Kaitlan pushed. At what point does disruption become destruction? Jasmine smiled. When the ones disrupting are black, it's called chaos. When they wear blue suits and write laws, it's called leadership. Maybe the line isn't where you think it is. Kaitlan inhaled, lips parting for a rebuttal, but the moment passed her. Jasmine had taken the rhythm, the weight, the gravity. And as the red light on the camera glowed, millions watching at home didn't see a guest anymore. They saw the host. Kaitlan's fingers tapped her cue cards like a drummer missing tempo. Her polished professionalism was intact, but something beneath was fraying. Jasmine wasn't debating, she was exposing, and Kaitlan knew it. Let's shift to the 2024 elections, Kaitlan said, her voice clipped now. You've said democracy is at risk. But isn't that a bit dramatic? Jasmine's laugh was low, too calm to be dismissive, too real to ignore. Dramatic, she echoed. Honey, the Capitol had zip ties and nooses 2 years ago. And people still ask me if I'm being too loud. The room fell silent. I don't say democracy's at risk because it sounds good on cable, she added. I say it because people who look like me get purged off voter rolls, gerrymandered into silence, and arrested for showing up. Kaitlan tried to pivot again. You've also accused state leaders of suppressing voters. But isn't that a legal process? Redistricting happens every cycle. Jasmine didn't blink. Legality doesn't mean morality. Jim Crow had signatures too. A beat. Then another. No script could help now. Kaitlan was outmatched, not because she wasn't smart, but because Jasmine wasn't there to play smart. She came armed with lived truth. And it showed. You want me to sound diplomatic, Jasmine said softly. But diplomacy never stopped bulldozers. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was earned. And in that silence, Jasmine looked into the camera, not at Kaitlan. Some interviews make headlines, she said. Others make history. Kaitlan's jaw tightened, just enough for the cameras to miss it, but not Jasmine. She noticed everything. Let's talk about accountability then, Kaitlan said sharply. You speak about injustice with such certainty. But what about the DOJ, the courts, the systems that are supposed to handle this? Are they all wrong? Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I don't think they're wrong, she said. I think they're late. Kaitlan hesitated, not expecting that. Justice isn't a theory, it's a clock, Jasmine continued. And for too many people in this country, the hands have never moved. Kaitlan leaned in. So what are you saying, that institutions are broken? I'm saying they were built that way, Jasmine replied. A hush slipped through the control room. Even Kaitlan's earpiece went quiet. No one dared interrupt the current. You can't fix what you won't face, Jasmine added. And this country would rather paint over cracks than admit the foundation's uneven. Kaitlan's next question died in her throat. Her eyes dropped to her notes, but they read like someone else's words now, irrelevant in the storm Jasmine had summoned. This is why I speak the way I do, Jasmine said, finally turning toward her host. Not to provoke. But because silence has a body count. And for the first time since the segment began, Kaitlan Collins had nothing left to say. Because Jasmine Crockett didn't come to be interviewed. She came to indict the silence. By now, Kaitlan wasn't guiding the conversation, she was surviving it. She looked at Jasmine, not as a guest, but as a force that refused to shrink. One who walked in with facts but spoke like memory, heavy, rooted, and undeniable. I want to press on something you just said, Kaitlan managed. You said, silence has a body count. That's strong language. What exactly do you mean? Jasmine didn't flinch. I mean George Floyd, she said flatly. I mean Breonna Taylor. I mean kids in Jackson drinking brown water while Congress debates definitions. The studio dimmed without the lights changing. That was the weight. I mean the silence when a black woman in Mississippi gets 30 years for voting, because she didn't know she couldn't. But a congressman can plot an insurrection and keep his seat. Kaitlan cleared her throat. But isn't it more productive to focus on building coalitions, on what unites us? Jasmine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You can't build coalitions on top of graves, Kaitlan. She didn't yell. She didn't gesture. She just told the truth, and let the truth be louder than theatrics. This isn't about unity, Jasmine added. It's about justice. Unity without justice is just PR. And that was the line that would trend before the interview even ended. Kaitlan leaned back slightly, her posture still poised, but her tone thinner now, like stretched fabric about to tear. The questions she once held with confidence now felt like paper shields in a firestorm. But isn't some of this divisive? She asked. I mean, if everything's a crisis, doesn't that desensitize the public? Make people tune out? Jasmine's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in disbelief. You think truth is what makes people tune out? She asked. No. What makes people tune out is watching the same violence wrapped in new excuses. Kaitlan's lips parted, searching for footing, but Jasmine continued. They've been watching this country patch holes with sound bites for decades. If anything, they're numb from denial, not outrage. The tension in the studio was no longer subtle, it was steel. And let's be clear, Jasmine added, I don't speak for shock. I speak because people are dying in slow motion, and America calls it progress. Behind the cameras, even the tech crew wasn't blinking. Something had shifted. This wasn't a segment anymore. It was testimony. Kaitlan tried to pivot. So what would you say to Americans who feel exhausted by this kind of conversation? Jasmine didn't hesitate. I'd tell them imagine how exhausting it is to live it. Boom. The control room knew that clip would explode on social media. It was a mic drop, but Jasmine wasn't done. Because she didn't come to drop the mic. She came to carry it all the way through. Kaitlan's voice lowered, whether from fatigue or surrender, no one could tell. Do you ever worry, she said cautiously, that this kind of rhetoric alienates moderates? That it pushes away potential allies? Jasmine let the question sit for a beat, then leaned forward. Let me be clear, I'm not here to babysit comfort. The line hung in the air like thunder after lightning. This country has spent centuries prioritizing the feelings of the comfortable over the lives of the vulnerable, she continued. If telling the truth alienates someone, maybe they were never allies to begin with. Kaitlan tried to respond, but Jasmine kept going, measured, deliberate, unstoppable. Real unity isn't built by softening the truth until it's palatable. It's built by standing in it, no matter how ugly. And saying, we're not moving forward until we fix this. Her voice never rose. But her presence did. And in that moment, she wasn't just responding to Kaitlan, she was speaking to a nation watching from couches, dorm rooms, break rooms, and bus stops. You don't make change by whispering to power, Jasmine said. You make it by standing so tall they can't look away. Kaitlan blinked. The next question in her hand suddenly felt irrelevant. Too safe. Too rehearsed. Because Jasmine wasn't giving an interview. She was rewriting the rules of what one could be. Kaitlan stared for a moment, as if trying to recognize the conversation she had planned. It was gone. Swept away by a tide Jasmine had brought with her, truth that didn't ask permission. So, Kaitlan asked carefully, what's the end goal then? What does justice actually look like to you? Jasmine didn't blink. Justice looks like people not having to beg for rights they already have. It looks like a system that doesn't need moments of reckoning every 10 years to remember black people are human. Her voice wasn't loud. It was exact. Like someone choosing each word with a scalpel, not a hammer. It looks like prosecutors who see lives, not just numbers. Like courts that don't weigh skin when weighing facts. And like interviewers who ask questions with curiosity, not choreography. Kaitlan flushed, just slightly. But Jasmine wasn't striking at her. She was aiming higher. This isn't about me being angry. It's about me being done. Done pretending that civility is more important than justice. There was nothing left to say after that. Not because the conversation was over, but because Jasmine had elevated it past soundbites, past stagecraft. Kaitlan looked into the camera and back at Jasmine, searching for an anchor. Any final thoughts? She asked. Jasmine tilted her head, then smiled, not soft, but sharp. Just one, she said. If truth makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself who the lie was protecting. The mic didn't drop. It didn't have to. The interview was scheduled for 40 minutes. It ran for 57. Not because of tech issues. Not because of producer cues. but because no one could look away. Kaitlan Collins sat back, her usual polished confidence tempered by something rare: respect. Not agreement. Not deference. But recognition. Jasmine had come in unshaken. She left unignorable. "Thank you for being here," Kaitlan offered, her voice more human now. Less rehearsed. "You've certainly given us a lot to think about." Jasmine nodded. "Thinking is a start. Acting is better." The lights dimmed. Cameras cut. But the silence that followed wasn't empty. Backstage, a junior producer whispered, "That wasn't an interview. That was a masterclass." And he was right. Jasmine hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't insulted or deflected. She simply held up a mirror, and dared America to look into it. Outside the studio, clips were already going viral. You can't build coalitions on top of graves. Justice is a clock, and some of us are still waiting. If truth offends you, maybe you were the lie's audience. Each line ignited like a match to gasoline. And Kaitlan? She sat alone in the studio, staring at the empty seat Jasmine had filled. For the first time in a long time, the story hadn't gone as planned. It had gone deeper. Because in a world of rehearsed interviews and polite deflections, one woman had taken the mic, not to perform, but to testify. She didn't come to entertain. She didn't come to play politics. She came to speak truth, unfiltered, unshaken, and unbothered. While others danced around the issues, Jasmine Crockett walked straight through them, mic in hand, spine straight, and facts blazing. And in a world where silence is rewarded and truth is punished, she didn't flinch. She didn't whisper. She roared. And now? Now the silence has nowhere left to hide. This wasn't just an interview. This was a reckoning.